All right, hello and welcome to Lifestyle Business. I'm Chris.
And I'm Ann. And we are back with you from my day off last week, celebrating my birthday. Did you guys like it without me?
No, I didn't.
That's right.
I loved having Dio on though.
Yeah, Dio was pretty good. I thought she did a nice job. Yeah, it's a rainy day here, and we're in the midst of allergy season in Sonoma County. So,
is it allergies?
Allergy season.
All right, I have a confession to make. As you know, we talk a lot about work-life integration, and we are a married couple working together and doing a show together. And we have been in a huge fight
This morning.
since we woke up, all the way up to 1 minute before the show.
2 minutes from now. 2 minutes from now.
So we're bringing it to you live, folks.
10 minutes left to check in.
Anyway, we do sometimes fight. It happens. Usually I lose my temper.
So I just want to say
sometimes Chris is a bit stubborn.
I'm sorry for being stubborn, for sometimes not including you. And I also want to acknowledge that there's been a lot of shit going on lately with some of the stuff at Launchpad and otherwise that you are bearing the brunt of. And I appreciate your leadership and how
this might be our best show ever.
I know.
People are tuning in, watching it. Thank you very much, sweetheart. That's very nice. All right, maybe.
I'm glad our guest is Dan today because Dan's a good enough friend that we can melt down a little bit before we bring him in.
Anyway, here's one for the blooper reel. Yeah, there we go. Well, I'm sorry for being a bit crazy sometimes. So,
comes with the territory.
It does come with the territory.
We're sort of like entertainment industry types now, right?
Yes, I'm actually crying because that was very sweet of you and very nice. And yes, sometimes our days are not always as good as others. And I appreciate that.
Let me just.
It would have been helpful if we had done that 15 minutes
Let me give the audience one tidbit. We were literally out in the car because Ann didn't want to have the fight here in the co-working space. So I went out to the car and she said to me, I've been sitting here for over an hour crying. And my excuse was, well, I've been on a Zoom call. I was in a meeting. She's like, your wife is crying? I mean, what would you do if Harper were sitting in the car crying?
And he said, Harper's not 46 years of age. I was like, well, she acts like it sometimes. Yeah. Anyway, I wasn't actually really crying. I was just trying to lay it on thick.
You were stewing?
I was stewing in the car, being annoyed and watching the clock, as you do when you're in a fight with your business partner and or spouse, and thinking to myself, really, this meeting must be going on long. And I know that Chris on the other side of it was looking at the clock thinking, how long can I wait so that we are on time for Lifestyle
Lauren,
Business?
I got all the time in the world. Let's get this going.
How long can I make this meeting last so I have a good reason why I didn't actually have to address this? And maybe she's pretty easygoing. Maybe she'll like warm up and get through it so we won't actually have to have this fight. But nonetheless, we made it. And now we're here. And it is true. Those are the drawbacks of working in a co-working space. You can't have a fight with your business partner. And that's okay. So that's why we have cars. And we are
I
so
think it's
excited.
one of the advantages of working in a co-working space personally.
Yes. He's like, are we over it yet? I was like, we haven't finished yelling at each other. Anyway,
All right,
we are so excited today to be with you and welcome our guest and dear friend, Dan, who I will say I have been watching Dan's ups and downs over the years. And I have a few things to say about Dan before I get into the prepared speech, which is Dan truly is living his most authentic self and most authentic life. And what I love about that is when Dan has shone a light over so many of the challenges that he's faced as an entrepreneur. And he's done things that a lot of people would not be willing to do, which is he's highlighted the downfalls of it. And he's highlighted his failings and his personal missteps and the no's and the heartbreak that comes along with being an entrepreneur and running a successful business. And I think it just takes so much bravery to actually be yourself, to put yourself out there and to sort of acknowledge those moments. And I think so many people live the glossy Instagram life. They live the look at my sparkle, look at my baby, look at my everything. And there is lots of those parts of our lives. We all have that, and it's really easy to focus on that. But the thing that is inspiring to others is telling people a little bit about the struggle. Oh, how convenient. We missed the crying part of our go live. Anyway, it has been so fun to watch Dan start to be on the upswing of his entrepreneurial journey and to see him celebrating that as well. Because I think the other thing that we fall back into is celebrating, maybe talking about the failure points after we've been successful, but not celebrating the little successes along the way. And it's been really fun in the last few months to watch Dan celebrate some of those successes and remind us all that it's okay. We can share our successes just as much as we can share our lessons. And those can be valuable to each other too. And the other thing I'm going to just say, fun story about Dan is, one of the things that we always talk about is if you want to be successful in life and in business and relationships, it's about showing up. And Dan, for me, embodies everything about showing up. And one of the funny stories that I have about Dan is I met him many years ago in New Orleans, and we were doing some work with Collision, and Chris was like, one of the volunteers is going to be willing to help you throw this party. And I had a bunch of employees on my team. They weren't even on my team because I was like helping out Launchpad, not getting paid, not doing anything. And none of them would help me put together this freaking party at Launchpad that wasn't even my party. And so literally I'm like trying to figure it all out. And this guy, he goes, there's this volunteer that's going to show up. And I was like, cool, I got some volunteer named Dan. And it's Dan Pierson. And Dan Pierson is definitely at this point in his career, I know him. I'm like, this guy is not a volunteer. He's our friend. But he volunteered because that was the deal you had to do to get a free Collision ticket. Yeah. And we would have given Dan a free Collision ticket anyway. He didn't have to volunteer. But he shows up. He's like, no, I'm here to do the work. I'm here to actually do the thing that needs to do it. I didn't ask for a favor from a friend. I actually delivered against it. And here are those plastic wine glasses that you asked me to get. What more can I do? And I think that is the definition of who Dan is as a person and why I'm so excited to welcome him on the show. And the last thing I'm going to say is, because I'm talking.
This is a good intro.
I know. The last thing I'm going to say about Dan is he also was one of our very first guests on Lifestyle Business last year.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know if it's a year ago to the day. I think it was in April after COVID had sort of started that we started this show. But he was definitely one of our first guests, and he's been through a lot over the last year, and I'm excited to catch up with that. And the thing that I wanted to say is I've been seeing this beautiful blue Volkswagen Bug in a lot of his Instagram posts, and I'm very keen to learn more about this Bug because it seems like he's got a perfect vehicle for cruising around Mexico.
I mean, I feel like you could use a little more four-wheel drive, Dan, but that's fair.
I bet it was manufactured in Mexico. I think they might still be making them down there. I don't know if they're still doing that. We'll find out.
Well, we'll find out soon. Anyway, Dan is going to chat to us about the ways he's supporting remote workers and digital nomads live their best life, untethered lives by helping them navigate the integration of work and life in a world that offers an ever-increasing possibility around flexible, distributed employment.
Sure does.
Topic near and dear to our heart, and near and dear to our ongoing topic of the future of work. All right, Dan Pierson is an adventurer and passionate believer in community travel. He's dedicated to helping companies create happier, healthier, and more productive remote employees and workplaces by designing and producing superlative. Don't mind me, I'm Canadian. Travel experiences. And Dan, welcome aboard. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I wish I'd done a little bit of house cleaning before I stepped on. I was listening so intently to the best introduction I've ever heard in my life. I'm now crying and you're crying. Chris, I'm sure we'll get around to you crying here shortly. We're all going to be crying. Hopefully the audience will be just bawling by the end of this. But that was just such a sweet intro. And it's something, if I could throw it back to you guys in a sense, like I've had business partners and God, is that hard. I've had, life partners or relation. I've never been married, but like life partners, and God, is that hard. And like what you guys do, and I'm sure there are challenges like maybe you had this morning. It sounds like a big challenge, but God, I can't imagine how difficult that is. And that from everything I've seen and understand, you guys navigate it with grace and compassion and patience. And, so I'm sure there are hard times, man. It sounds like today was a hard time, but I just thought I would say that because really from the outside looking in, you guys do that, tremendously well. So.
Oh, thanks, Dan.
That's really sweet.
Big drama, little challenges. That's our motto. Wait.
Big drama. They say in Spanish, and I don't know if it's Mexican Spanish or other Spanish, they say, pueblo pequeño, infierno grande. So
yes.
Small town.
There we go. Perfect.
That's sort of my MO. No, it's great to see you, man. So why don't you give us a quick, I'd like to chat a little bit about kind of the COVID journey over the last year, because I think you've had a fun and interesting thing. The last time we were in real life together, am I right? Was that Christmas in Mexico City?
Wow, just around Christmas in Mexico City. Wow,
yeah, it was after New Year's.
Mhm.
We had Harper. We hung out in a
the
Saints game, watched them lose.
Yeah.
Really colored the rest of the day for us too. But it was great to catch up with you. So, what has changed?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And hearing you mention me coming on the show last year, almost a year ago. I mean, I can tell you, I was sitting on my brother's porch where I was essentially a COVID refugee in some sense, just distraught, and I remember being on that show being like, God, like, not that I don't deserve to be here, but like, I don't even really have, beyond my COVID sob story, I have no idea what I'm even doing on this planet. So like, why would I talk to people about me being a businessman? I had a massive kind of, I guess, identity. Yeah. Last year was very hard. Yeah. So, I mean, phew. And even, yeah. So if that was December of 2019, I was right in the thick of negotiating this $500,000 investment in the company that I'd started a couple years earlier. I was deep in credit card debt. I'd negotiated a $50,000, I guess, like secondary sale is what you call that, so that they were buying, giving me cash for my own shares beyond the other 450 they were putting into the company to serve as that kind of launch pad. And that got me to February, and I signed a term sheet. And the business was just growing after years of me flying all around. It was a travel business, me flying all around the world, being a guide and doing the marketing and sales and negotiating with vendors at 3 o'clock in the morning while I was like on a sailboat in Greece and other people were off partying. Just 3 years of just the struggle that, you guys can certainly identify with. And I bet a lot of folks listening in can as well. And February 20th, I was in a WeWork in Santa Monica with, the two partners in the investment firm, and they were very much, I think, aligned with this idea of lifestyle business. I don't say who they were; they don't deserve my time, to be honest. But all that to say, like, they weren't a traditional VC. They were very much like revenue generating. It's not indie, which it's not indie, it's not earnest, it's not any of those. But it's one of the firms that thinks like that, or purports to anyway. All that to say, February 20th of last year, was in a WeWork in Santa Monica, signed term sheet in hand, whiteboarding brand exercises. This far off COVID-19 thing, was something that the Chinese were dealing with, right? No way it's going to come over to the US and be some cataclysmic event. So the lawyers, were doing their thing. And I saw increasingly, I flew back to Mexico City, that weekend, this is late February, saw increasingly that something was happening that was beyond our collective control. And it was starting to steamroll. And I'm just like, lawyers, please hurry up with this. They've been working on it for like a month and a half, just like, let's get the deal signed. Let's get the deal signed. And lawyers take forever. And just watching this steamroll. And then on March 5th, I was back in Mexico City in my apartment and got an email from the two partners at the investment firm saying that they were pulling out of the deal because of COVID-19 and concerns around travel and the wider market. And, and that really just, sent me into a tailspin. You can work on something for, I've been working on that deal for 6 months, and it was the culmination of 3 years of hard work, and it fell apart in an instant, and it was shattering, So that had these cascading effects, but I'll stop there for the moment anyway. And it was one of the hardest time of my life.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Dan, because it's really difficult, and it's sort of like one of those things that hearing you describe it, you feel like you're in that scenario, right? And so many entrepreneurs, that is a really important milestone, not necessarily the pinnacle, but an important milestone. Like, we're getting funded, right? And I know how hard you'd worked towards this, and we talked a lot about it as leading up to that. You also were, you've been very open all along, on social media and Instagram, and talking about sort of your journey. So just keep us going, if you don't mind, a little bit on the story of where you went from there over the last year, and I want to get to where you are now, because through the summer, but around September, I don't know, I started hearing some bright spots from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So March 5th, right, was when I got that email. Simultaneously, this was the company that I was running. I even still have some swag, Bolt Travel. So I was bringing people back from these trips around the world, Patagonia and Panama, navigating as a solopreneur. Like, I was punching way above my weight class. These other companies, bigger established companies, had whole health and safety teams that were like extracting people and talking to the State Department. I was just like, okay, like, let's help you figure out your flight, like one of the last flights back from this country. So there was that period for a couple of weeks where it was just triage, I guess you'd say. And then I left my apartment in Mexico City. I left my, my community there, my home. I went up to Georgia, where I talked to you guys last year around this time. And it was just a disaster, all that credit card debt that I had, that was kind of coming due, and, it was just a really, really hard time. So, in June, I finally, kind of picked myself up and was like, okay, like, what comes after this? There's something that comes next. And in the interim, I'd been, I was living at my brother's. I was living like in Richmond, where Chris is from. I was like living at my mom's realtor's like unfurnished apartment that he couldn't rent out, like literally no furniture, just like, but just picking up the pieces and like starting to pick up the pieces. Right in March, some friends of mine who ran a company called Unsettled that was a little bit further along in the journey than Bolt, right when all this shit had happened, we had a conversation, like, they just planted the seed that maybe we could band forces and get the ships, together and weather out the storm, get to the other side together. So we picked up that conversation in June. mid-June, and just had, their business similarly, and I'll get into what they do and how that's lent itself to how we're working with businesses now, in a minute. But all that to say, like, we had just frank conversations, and they, yeah, I mean, that's a process. Like, anybody who's ever sold a company, and this was like an acqui-hire at best, right? Like, I actually ended up just dissolving the company, and they gave me, a significant portion of their company, where I'm now an owner of their company. But we had just, frank conversations around how all that would work over the course of about a month. I got to a place where we all felt good about it. And then I came on full time in early July.
Right on. And it has been, I mean, I think that is an interesting point, is like, and I've had moments, we've all had moments, right, over the last year where you're like, I don't have any moves left, right? I've been, I'm on the board and I can't see the next move, right? And sometimes it's not that it's a gift. And it's interesting because in our business, we hear a lot of times people are like, oh my God, the future is flex work. Your business is going to be so great. And you're like, yeah, I see on like level 5 that I can probably get to that like next level business. That's going to be real good. But like, I don't have any moves. And so it sounded like you kind of got to the point where you're like, I don't have any moves anymore. And sometimes stepping out of the game is the thing that opens up the next level or open up next board, is sort of that like freeing moment of saying, all right, then don't make any moves. Can you kind of talk us through the sort of advice you have for folks who are at the end of the point where they're like, I don't have any moves?
Yeah, that's excellent. And like, the first thing I would say is there are always more moves, right? There's always, it might not be with what you're doing right now, but there are always more moves if you're an entrepreneur, or just a human being, unless you've really backed yourself into a corner and you're like serving a life sentence for, murdering someone and you're never getting out of jail. Like, there's always more moves. But like, the situation that I was facing in April or May or early June of last year, like, I put out a poll. I kept putting out these polls on Twitter, right? And I said, when do you think you'll travel? Because my business was the intersection of two things that like were dying, right? It was group travel, so like meeting strangers and being in confined quarters with them, and then international travel, right? So I put out these Twitter polls and said, when do you think you'll be in a place to purchase, international group travel? You're gonna want to travel in a group internationally, and like at first people were like, September 2020. And then people were like, November 2020. And as I kept putting out this poll, all of a sudden, like, maybe never, right? In the height of the pandemic, maybe never. So I did have that realization that like for Bolt and what we had done, and like I tried to do other things, we put out like video, we did something similar to Lifestyle Business for our members, like, bringing on adventures and stuff and that kind of thing. But like the business, as I knew it, was never going to go anywhere. But then I looked at Unsettled and I was like, wow, I was like, maybe this is where I'll talk about what Unsettled does, or at least did before the pandemic, and now we're starting to do again. So 30-day co-working retreats around the world: Buenos Aires, Bali, Cape Town, Nicaragua, Barcelona, Tokyo, Tuscany, and all with this idea that, of course, we're hooking you up with like a great place to live, a co-working space, a really beautiful community of people, of entrepreneurs, artists, creatives, digital nomads, remote workers. But beyond all that, it's really about setting up really intentional experiences that explore this idea that we're living in a new, many of us, not everyone, that's always important to note, but many of us are living in this world of increased possibility, right, around flexible and hybrid work. And like, what does it mean that suddenly like a huge segment of the population now has much more freedom over when they work and how they work and where they work? And that's what the experiences over the course of those 30 days in places like Bali and Buenos Aires, that's how we explored that possibility. Right. So I saw that and I was like, wow, like everybody is now working remotely, or a lot of people are working remotely like that. If travel comes back, like that will be a massive thing. Right. So I was like, I'd love to tie myself to that ship. So that was a big decision in going to, to sell it to Unsettled, to sell Bolt to Unsettled. But beyond that, I was like, I've known these two guys that started it for a couple years. Like we always viewed ourselves as collaborators rather than competitors, even though we kind of competed, in ways. And yeah, that's that was the start of it.
I love that theme of collaborators versus competitors. And I think it's something that we espouse. One of our values here is we go long.
Yeah.
Which is the idea that like, you never think about what's the transaction that could happen from the relationship. You just think about, how to actually build these relationships with people doing interesting things and be supportive of that. And then, who knows what the world gives us, right? Might just give us a drink in a bar in Mexico City, or for you to catch up with my sister on a beach in Zipolite. And I think it is interesting. I'd love to hear about how you have navigated that time in between competitors and collaborators.
Yeah. So I mean, the Unsettled deal was like, I think the perfect example. So like their core product was these 30-day co-working retreats. Our core product was more adventure travel, rooftop tent camping safaris in Africa and sailing in places like Greece and Norway and the Caribbean and all these other, trips that now seem like, wow, things like that used to happen. And now they're starting to happen again. But, there was some overlap, like Unsettled, both the guys, it's Jonathan and Michael, the two co-founders of Unsettled, both really avid sailors. They ran these sailing trips. Like they approached me about using my connections in Africa. We had conversations around that. Like we had pretty granular conversations about like things like Facebook ads. Like, oh, like tell me how you guys structure your funnel on Facebook. This is how we did it. Oh, like you guys want to learn about membership? Like this is actually like honestly like the secret to my business. The fact that Bolt was a membership organization and people paid ahead of time to join, and then they paid for the trips. And I was like, let's chat about it. I'll tell you what I've learned. I'll tell you what's worked. So I think that really set us up for success and for the opportunity to like, to trust each other enough to go into business together. Cause that's a serious thing, going into business with people is a serious thing. You guys obviously know that.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point, which is I think sometimes so many people hide like the nuts and bolts of business, because they feel like somehow that's the secret sauce, and it never really is. Like all the tactics one employs are all good tactics, right? And so being able to be like open about, hey, here's my Facebook funnel, like it's okay, unless you're literally going after exactly the same customer for exactly the same item, like a product. You can learn from each other. And I think it's a good lesson for entrepreneurs out there and folks across our platform around find ways to actually share your business insights with someone else. They'll probably in return share their business insights with you. Is that fair?
100%. And like we were operating in travel, which is like such a massive market that honestly, like if you surveyed 1,000 people, who had heard of Unsettled, like probably 3 of them had heard of Bolt. And if you surveyed 1,000 people who'd heard of Bolt, probably 3 of them had heard of Unsettled. So it's like, what's the point of us competing against each other when there's like these much larger companies, that are taking up way more market share? It's like, let's steal market share together from those companies, because we're upstarts and we're doing something new.
So let's get into a little bit of the crystal ball, sort of the future work, sort of prognostication here. Travel's going to come back. I mean, we were in Mexico, a month ago. Todos Santos was full of Sprinter vans. A lot of people down there who
Hashtag real life.
Bay Area, refugees. Some people have been down there for the last year, right? But people all over the place. There's depending on your risk level and risk tolerance. You're back in Mexico. People are beginning to travel, but when as the vaccines roll out, more people will travel. That being said, some of the things from this last year are going to stick, right? Some of these changes are permanent, and one of them, as you mentioned, remote work, hybrid work. A lot of companies not going back to just sort of the
not 9 to 5, 5 days a week.
Yeah, the philosophical office environment. They may have offices, but yes, as a manager, I don't need to look over all my employees and make sure their butts are in the seats and their hands are on the keyboards to know that they're working. We've all sort of fast forward learned that, remote work can be effective. So with that newfound freedom, part of this is many of us have been at home, or certainly remote from the relationships that we otherwise are nurturing while we're in an office or while we're in a co-working space, having coffee together, going out to lunch together. And we want to come back together and build those relationships with our teams, not just on Zoom calls, right? So how does, what's your vision of that? And obviously that's sort of where, the space that Unsettled plays in.
Yeah, that's a great question. It really it takes us to the 30,000 foot view of what Unsettled is, and what we're trying to do. So, I mentioned Unsettled's background and history, these 5 years of running 100+ trips all around the world, helping consumers understand this new world that remote work, nothing new, right? IBM in the 80s let, tens of thousands of people work remotely. So it's certainly, it's not new, but it's accelerated in the past year, at 20 years of acceleration, right? In the course of 10 or 11 months. So, Unsettled had this background, right, in helping individuals navigate this future of a different kind of way of working, call it the future of work. So my mandate when I came in was figuring out, okay, we have that core expertise, that experience. How can we help businesses that are now navigating this transition, right? This historic transition. And they're facing, just incredibly challenging issues around communication and collaboration, what it means to be part of a culture when you're not seeing your employees that you've seen, your colleagues rather, that you've seen every day for the last 20 years. Suddenly, you're interacting in a completely different way. So, that was my mandate when I came in, was helping companies, figuring out how we could help companies in that way. So I think there are going to be tremendous opportunities in person to help companies do that. And we're already relaunching consumer travel. We've got a 30-day co-working retreat in Bali planned for October. We've got sailing trips that give people a little bit of a reset around, their relationship between life and work in Baja and in Tahiti in October. Baja's in May. So and then I hope that there are going to be really interesting opportunities to help companies come together in person, but they're not going to do that for a while, right? So in the meantime, the product that we've launched is called Team Journeys, right? So it's 4 weeks. It is all over Zoom because that's just the world that we're living in right now, right? It's 4 modules, these 90-minute experiences over Zoom that explore this new way that we're working, right? And they help guide people towards answering their own questions around what it means to be at their best in a hybrid or flexible environment. And I refer to them as a mullet. And whenever I say that, I wish I had a mullet wig, but the front end of this mullet, right, which is the business part, is all about, tactical tools and tips and concepts for working in a remote world, or asynchronous versus synchronous, and, how you create boundaries in your life when your home is your office and your office is your home, or your car, in your case, and all sorts of place and space and how we're thinking about these things differently. That's the front end of it. The back end of it, while you're doing all that, is connecting people in a really safe, intimate environment so they can build that community while they're learning these things about how they work remotely. They're actually putting them into practice to meet colleagues across their organization, right? And that's the community building that's happening very intentionally by design. It goes way, way deeper than that, but that's kind of the idea, right? And that's happening over Zoom, and we're helping employees at, Fortune 50 companies manage that crazy transition from working 5 days a week in the office to now working 5 days a week at home. And the biggest opportunity, to your point, is what happens next, right? And right. It is going to be some mix of working in an office or a co-working space or a smaller office than you're used to, because Facebook, now all of their employees have migrated to Tahoe or wherever else. And it's going to be some kind of mix, but that's really what we're getting at, is helping people, navigate that transition.
What are you hearing from companies? And I was going to give you an opportunity. We UNICEF, a large organization, it's a public RFP, so we can talk about it. But why don't you talk a little bit about how they're working
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
interesting. I think we're seeing in a lot of metropolitans, a lot of companies, we're reading between the lines, right? Which is they're looking for spokes around their hub. And so if you have a place in downtown Manhattan and the majority of your employees are commuting from all around the boroughs, the thinking is you could actually place colleagues with each other in more flexible scenarios, and so that people don't have to kind of do the commute every day. And you can allow your office space to be a convening space rather than a house for 9 to 5 workers who are there every single day. And so UNICEF's put out a RFP for co-working spaces and flex work solutions throughout, all of the Bay Area, all of the sort of surrounding areas of New York, and are doing a test in New Jersey. So we're going to apply and hopefully we'll get it. But
amazing.
hopefully, other co-working spaces might get it too, right? So the idea is kind of a good one, which is create these little spots people can go so that they still feel like they're around work colleagues. And I think I hear that consistently. I still want colleagues. They don't have to work for my company, but I want, that energy of people around when I'm working. So it's,
Sounds like the origin story for co-working, right?
It really is, but
But then in your sort of end of it, Dan, like Ariel, our producer, who the audience can't see, but we can see. I want to give Ariel a big hug. We haven't seen each other in over a year. There's also going to be people who may be working remotely in a co-working space or at home, but you do want to bring them back for team building, right? I have this thing I say, and I don't know if it's true or not, because you just mentioned the Zoom experiences and sort of team building, that you're leading. But personally, I really build relationships offline and then maintain relationships online. So, I want to, give Ariel a hug. Like I said, I would love our team to be able to all hop on a plane and go down to Mexico for a week, or, go on an Unsettled, 30-day experience together. I just can imagine that bonding then would last for a year, for a quarter, for a year, for whatever, whatever you need it to, but that in-person experience is still going to be very important.
Yeah. Oh my God. There's like so much exciting stuff to unpack there. Just think about like where you guys started, what Ann was talking about, like that kind of hub and spoke model, right? Like think about what that does for the environment. The fact that people are no longer driving into New York City to go to an office, right? Think about what that does for their life. Like the most important thing in someone's life is their time, right? Like Bill Gates taught me that lesson personally. It's like literally time is the only non-renewable resource, and people for the past 50 years have like spent humongous amounts of time like in a car or in a train or on a bus or on a plane. It's crazy. Like now we think like what a crazy thing. But to your point, Chris, like they still want that camaraderie, that connection. So like 100%. That hub and smoke model, I think I'm excited about that. I think also like the fractional time in the office, that's something that we're hearing a lot about from different partners, and something that our the team journeys like directly addresses, right, around place and space, and like how you can, and there's some really sticky ethical issues around like if you are in an office and you have FaceTime with your boss, like chances are you're going to get promoted more often than folks who aren't, and there's this whole universe of extremely like complicated questions around it. But I think like to me, when I hear all this and something that I'm working, we have a partner called Ethical Systems. It's this guy, John Height's think tank. They're associated with NYU, and they're like super top notch academic, think tank around company culture, organizational psychology. Like Adam Grant's on their board, like all, super heavy hitters. And it's like, cool. Like, how you're talking about how all this stuff works. Like, how do you measure this stuff? Right. Like where we are now, right, in this like crazy post-pandemic, during pandemic world, wherever we are, but like, and then you start to, in HR, they call them interventions, right? Like you come in with these interventions, whether that's like team journeys, this 4-week experience, whether that's you guys, bringing your teams together in Mexico, like how did your culture and your organization operate effectively before those interventions? How do they operate during those interventions? And then how do they operate, right after, 6 months after, a year after? And you start to incorporate, the things that you're talking about around physical space and how physical space impacts how companies and cultures work together. And it's like, you need to be able to like measure all those things. So there's a whole, it's fascinating. Like if you had told me, 6 months ago or a year ago, I guess, like you'd be, directly in the future of work, like helping company, Fortune 50 companies, like, we have one of the FANGs as a client. We have one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world as a client. You'd be helping those companies understand, like, then we get into actually what I'm doing, which is selling these like $1 million deals. And I'm like, shh, I've never done this before.
Hey, no imposter syndrome around here. You got it.
Yeah. So, so it's a whole new world. Yeah. It's a wild thing, but it's really exciting. This is like a massive change in how people live and work. So it's cool to be a part of it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. One of the things that you're talking about is that it's about kind of you're creating the systems and the programs around activating companies and teams and doing that. And I think people talk about flexible workspace. Flexible workspace is a tool in that tool chest. And what we're seeing right now is, are you still there, Dan? Did he freeze? Dan froze. So I'm just going to talk while Dan refreshes.
He'll nod when he gets back on.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're seeing right now is that flex workspace is actually being commoditized, right? If you have a building and it's empty, you can turn that building into flex workspace.
Yeah.
It's what happens.
But that's not necessarily community.
That's not community. And it's what happens for the companies when they are engaging in different types of workspace. So I think that it is the rise of creative collaboration spaces. It's the ability for teams to convene together, whether that's on a travel trip or it's even through these virtual programs. But at the end of the day, the platform is just the platform, and it's the magic is what happens on top of that platform.
I totally agree. Well, we really want to thank Dan for being here with us today. Let's bring he's back. Let's bring him in for
bring him in for
quick
a sign off. Looks like there he is.
There he is.
You're back.
You're back, Dan.
That Mexico Wi-Fi not so.
Cool. I think the Mexican, I was using data because that just works better. But hopefully this will still work. Because I ran out of data, now I'm back on Wi-Fi. It's funny, like that whole like leapfrogging technology. Like the Wi-Fi is, 10x faster than the cell phone is 10x faster than the Wi-Fi. But anyway, we're here, and sorry about that. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah,
we can. We were sort of we're coming to the end anyway, Dan. You want any final questions or final thoughts for Dan?
No, I think Dan's highlighting one of the challenges that we've talked about in this new world. Is unstable Wi-Fi continues to be a challenge, whether at home or abroad.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have any tips for folks?
I just put $99 down on Starlink, which I'm very excited about. Elon Musk. Yeah, I put a $99 deposit on Starlink. I'm about to put a $99 deposit on a Cybertruck. That's a down payment on my next year of really hard work. That I'm gonna be able to buy a Cybertruck, the new Elon Musk Tesla Cybertruck.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll roll up to Sonoma and I'll see you guys. I'll pull up in my Cybertruck and Chris, that is one thing.
Can you mount a Starlink satellite on the Cybertruck? That's the question.
You better be able to. I would be shocked if you can't. Chris, if we have, only because you brought it up, if we have 30 more seconds here, I would love to give a if it'll load, I'd love to give a shout out to the new business that I'm starting here in Mexico. This is let me see, hopefully it'll load. And if I can even share my screen, is that a thing?
Yeah, I think you can if I need to give you a permission, but see the little share button down at the bottom? I think if you click that.
Okay. Here, give me half a second here. I'm flying. So I'll set up while I'm doing this, I'll set up the scene for you guys. So Chris mentioned that I bought this. It's called a VW Bocho. So it's like the classic Beetle that they've made. Lost me. Nah.
Are they still making it down there?
Oh, still here. Yeah. So they are not. So they made these cars from 1976 to was when they started. You'll see them everywhere in Mexico. They're very classic VW Beetle, right? So what I'll do is I'll Chris, I can share my screen now.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So the business that I'm launching here in Mexico. Share. Am I sharing my screen now? I'm throwing it on. Share screen. Perfect. Share screen.
No.
Okay, cool. Let me know when you guys can select window or screens. StreamYard. Sharing fire. Can you guys see my screen now?
Yes.
Yeah, there we go.
There we
All right,
go, guys. Here we go.
I think it's coming up.
We're in like, what is that? We're in crazy town.
This is good. The
Okay.
other tab.
We're in like full on
Full wormhole.
Okay. So here, if we can. So can you guys see my screen? Can you see what I have on my screen? Picture of a car.
I think it's gonna be it's a lag, a little bit of a lag. It should be coming here in a sec.
What is this?
Here we go.
Something's coming
Something's
up.
happening. It's not gonna happen, Dan.
Here we go. Okay, I've got it. No, I've got it.
Okay.
All right, you can
Oh,
see
yeah.
it.
There you are. There you are.
All right, here we go.
There we go.
So you land in
Oh,
where I
yeah.
live down
Yes.
the coast of Oaxaca, Huatulco, Puerto Tulum, or Tabarder, Los Cabos. This thing for the airport for you to enjoy and just rock it and have just an excellent time. So that all that to say, by the end of this month, when you guys.
Can we put our order in now? That's my question.
I'm in. I want it.
We're losing Dan. That thing's
All right,
sweet.
we've lost Dan. That is sweet. I want one. I want mine to be hot pink. What color is yours going to be?
Oh, we're getting two? All right. Let's see. There's Dan back.
I want lavender. I think lavender is a good neutral.
Oh, I'm back, and I think maybe this is where we ended the show. Go, but maybe I'll. Okay, cool. And if you come down here, we'll have a lavender boat waiting for you. This should be the logo. I don't know. That's on the card.
I'll send you the color.
But anyway, so it was great. So great to be here with you guys. Thank you for.
It was awesome to be with you, Dan. We're going to let you go, but really good to see you, buddy. And we will stay in touch. And yes, we want one of those bugs for sure. Well, that was fun. Those are awesome.
I really want one.
That's sweet.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now we just need a place in Mexico for it.
Yeah, we sure do. All right. Well, we have a member magic today.
Woo-woo. Out of Nashville, AGD
Yes.
was featured in Guitar Girl magazine, where they shared 5 top tips for every indie artist needs to know. AGD is an artist development and entertainment management company based out of our location in Nashville, Tennessee.
Speaking of which, Nashville is hot. We're getting a lot of leads for Nashville. Things are coming back. It's good to see a lot of signs of life in East Nashville.
A lot of good action, and we're thinking about coming your way in August. Of course, barring vaccines, more shots in arms.
Yeah.
But we're hoping to be out there at the end of the summer. All right. Thank you for joining us today. We will be back next week with our friend Robert Fogarty. This is a first full circle moment for us as we embarked on our journey of becoming podcast hosts and the hosts of this amazing show, Lifestyle Business, in March 2020. Robert was our very first guest on Lifestyle Business, and we are so excited to welcome back almost a year to the day to catch up on what he's been doing with his company, Dear World. And if you guys remember correctly, Dear World was also having a bottom of the barrel moment a year ago as their plans for being cash flow positive in 2020 had all but dissolved.
Well, we'll have to hear
I
how he's
wonder
doing
where they
because,
are today.
just like Dan, I think Robert has made some pivots and some changes and has exciting things happening in his business. And he has moved certainly more into the virtual world for the time being and probably move back when we can, when it's safe to do so.
Pretty darn exciting. So stay tuned for next week. And as always, a quick note. If you want to catch up on all of our past episodes, you can subscribe to us here on the LPTV programming channel or subscribe and like our podcast, Lifestyle Business, wherever you get your podcast from.
All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in today.
We're going to wrap up.
And I love you.
We're going to go get some lunch.
All right. Take care, guys.